I want to note up front that there will be some mentions of sexual violence in this episode. Upon arrival at American ports, African captives were taken from various trading hubs to be auctioned off to the highest bidder for plantation labor. Historian Dinah Ramey Berry writes in her book, The Price for Their Pound of Flesh, that an enslaved person could be worth anywhere from $4 to $94,000 when adjusted for 2014 numbers. Plantation owners searched for enslaved laborers to cultivate cash crops, the most lucrative of which being cotton, sugar, indigo, tobacco, and rice. So when these enslavers came to markets searching for new laborers, they considered several factors before making a bid. Enslavers considered the health and strength of potential laborers. They considered age, height, skin color, and the specific skills an enslaved worker might have been able to bring. But there was another element that shaped the hierarchy of value to prospective enslavers, and that's gender. Gender placed a figurative price ceiling on enslaved women's value, even though, as we'll see, they were often expected to do the exact same labor as enslaved men. The deeply entrenched patriarchy in European cultures extended across racial lines and played a significant role in shaping African captives' monetary worth. And even though enslaved women were not sold at the same high price range as enslaved men, their value to those who purchased them was absolutely clear. In many regions of the colonies, enslaved women's ability to reproduce was hugely important. Buying a laborer who could bear children meant that once those children got older, the enslaver could either exploit that child's labor or sell that child for a profit. And as we've discussed, one of the most consequential laws that developed around slavery in the colonial era was Virginia's use of partus sequitur ventrum, codified by the Virginia Assembly in 1662, which established the legal precedent that defined an enslaved person by their mother's status, not their father's.
I don't think with the rape case of Annie Reese was that unusual because, first of all, they did not regard black people as humans, first of all. This goes back to the plantation. We were animals, monkeys. And so they felt that we were really not human beings. So this attitude transcended from the plantation even to the day, if you will, because there are some white males, who still do not believe that we are human beings, that we are animals. And so therefore, so you kill an animal, you kill a dog. It's no different. By having the power to have sex with black women when they wanted to, they were in control.
Run, yeah, black woman, and sit on daddy's knee. Well, I'm got something to tell you, pretty mama.
In May of 1918, there was a series of lynchings in Georgia. They came to the house of Hayes and Mary Turner and took Hayes Turner because they thought that he was involved in a conspiracy to kill a white plantation owner. They took him off and lynched him. His wife was 9 months pregnant.
And Mary Turner said that if she ever found out who committed these crimes against her husband, she was going to swear out a warrant and have them arrested. The mob went insane at the impudence of an African-American woman daring to challenge them. And they pulled her out of her home and dragged her to a river, strung her up, tortured her, lit her on fire, and she still wasn't dead yet. So a mob member came and cut open her womb, and the baby spilled out. And the baby was alive, and they stomped the baby, and then left Mary Turner and her child to die.
In the land of Jim Crow laws and customs, Mary Turner had done the unthinkable, and to the white supremacist, the intolerable. She had threatened to fight back.
At the edge of Central Park in Manhattan, there's a bronze statue of a doctor named James Marion Sims, whose brilliant achievement carried the fame of American surgery throughout the entire world. He's the guy who created the vaginal speculum, an instrument gynecologists use for examination. He pioneered the surgical repair for fistula, a complication from childbirth, and became known as the father of modern gynecology. But that brilliant achievement was the result of a series of excruciating experimental surgeries that he conducted on enslaved women.
You also write about, and this is unpleasant stuff to get into, but you write more explicitly, I think, than most accounts of slavery have been about the sexual exploitation of women. Now, when I was a kid, and you go on a tour of an antebellum house somewhere in the Mississippi Valley, there'd usually be no reference to physical relations between the owners or white people and the slaves, but sometimes the tour guide would cast off some playful reference to the part of the plantation where sometimes the young men of the plantation or the sons of the owner, sometimes they would end up down in the quarters, and that's how a light-skinned baby would come to pass. And there was something kind of humorous about it, and it was this modest little thing that had to do with when young men got too drunk and went to excess on a Saturday night. You quote someone, the rape of a particular black woman after she's been purchased, as is the common practice. You say slavery's frontier was a white man's sexual playground.
Yeah, those are strong statements, but I also think that they're true. I was certainly surprised when I started to discover in the papers of Rice Ballard, who starts off as one of the country's great slave traders and eventually becomes one of the country's great plantation owners by the 1850s. The operations he owns are producing 10,000 bales of cotton a year. I was surprised to discover the great degree of frankness with which he and his business partners wrote about enslaved women, and particularly the light-skinned ones who were sold as a kind of symbol of sexual prowess, if you will, marketed as such in certain ways. I was surprised by the degree of frankness to which they talked about all of that and talked about their own escapades and assaults, sexual assaults on women, and just the way in which they accepted this as part of the attraction, the frills of the trade, the ways in which commodities, who were human beings, were marketed as sexual commodities, and this was certainly one of the most depressing parts of the research, as you can imagine.
All right, so now we're going to take a closer look at the death of Breonna Taylor. The 27-year-old African-American woman was shot and killed inside her Louisville home by police when they were conducting a no-knock warrant raid. As protests across the country continue to rage against police brutality in the wake of George Floyd's deadly arrest, some activists and scholars wonder where the outrage and coverage is for unarmed black women who have died at the hands of police officers as well. The University of Florida law professor Michelle S. Jacobs is going to join us now to talk about this. Michelle, right now we're talking about Breonna Taylor, and you're seeing the hashtag Say Her Name, but Say Her Name started before Breonna Taylor. It's not just her. It's Tatiana Jefferson, who was killed in her home while she was playing video games with her nephew. It's Ayanna Stanley Jones, just 7, who was killed in her home when police were conducting a raid. And though these are high-profile cases, it certainly seems like men get much more attention in the media. When it comes to protests, there's much more outrage. So can we start this conversation by talking about women who are the victims of police abuse versus black men, black women versus black men, and whether or not there is a difference and what those differences are?
Sure, those are great questions, and there are differences, obviously. The differences are for a number of complicated reasons, but at the very first level, we have to look at how the media treats the death of black women at the hands of the police. And if you actually look through the published news articles about the deaths of so many black women who have died at the hands of the police, what you'll see is that very few of them reach the level of national press coverage, and those that do only last for one news cycle. So even though Breonna Taylor was killed in March, we're not really getting press on her in the U.S. until May. And the same was true with Tatiana Jefferson. And, you know, there are just so many women who die at the hands of the police and their stories never reach the media. So we really do have to ask why that happens. And the bottom line, the hard answer is that it's probably because American media doesn't care about the deaths of Black women.
Why do they treat us so bad? Why do they do things just to make us mad? Why do they treat us so bad? Why do they hate us so bad? It's gotta be something deeper, deeper, deeper. It's gotta be something deeper, deeper. It's gotta be something deeper, deep, deeper. It's gotta be something deeper.